Today we talk about war. Russia's ongoing, immoral, illegal war of aggression against Ukraine, the West, and America. Now, there have been some developments since last time I talked to you about this, but it is very clear that we are at war with Russia, that Russia, under the leadership of Putin, is attacking the West. It's through something that people call hybrid warfare, but it's still warfare. And that includes information operations to divide societies, to promote nationalist parties like MAGA, AFD, Le Pen's party, all the nationalist societies in the European countries. But there are other aspects of this war. There are now drone flights that are impinging on NATO airspace. Leipzig had a number of drones reportedly from Russia buzzing around. There are drones in the Baltics, in Poland, and now there are indications that Russia's getting ready for mass mobilization. In addition, there was just a story that broke yesterday or the day before in Poland about the arrest of a person that the Russians had recruited to kill an American. We know that from a number of different sources, the Russians are sabotaging and attacking the infrastructure of Europe, and this continues to go on and on and on. So we need to realize we are at war with Russia, a war that Russia started. Russia started the war. They are the warmongers. Putin is a tyrant, and an essential part of tyranny is to wage war with your neighbors and against your neighbors. Okay, now Ukraine is destroying Russian wild berries, which is like their Amazon, and the pictures, the photographs, are just incredible. It's apocalyptic in Russia. So Russia's industry and infrastructure is being hit by the Ukrainians. Wildberries is the largest retail chain in Russia. I understand about 50%, up to 50% of that capability has been destroyed, maybe around 45%. Up to half the oil processing and refining capabilities have been destroyed by Ukrainian sanctions, which are attacks by drones. The Shadow Fleet is being disabled. There's a report of over 132 of the Russian tankers and ships in the Black Sea being attacked and disabled. In addition, Jay in Kiev is reporting that Russian grain exports are down 90% due to Ukrainian attacks on the Russians. And note that Ukraine is attacking industrial as well as military targets. They're all fair military targets under international law. Okay, Russia does not do that in response to Ukraine. Russia attacks civilians, attacks churches, okay, because they want to wipe out, they want to commit genocide, and they are committing genocide against the Ukrainian people. Russia is evil. Okay, in addition, the Russian stock market is dropping, the ruble is becoming more worthless. Putin is actually calling on oligarchs to fund the war. The internet's been cut off, or it's intermittent. Messaging, I think Telegram's been cut off. That's their big method to talk to each other in Russia. And the founder of that is now being brought up on charges, from what I hear. They're running out of gas in parts of Russia, especially in Crimea. Front line is definitely stalled. Over 1.5 million losses. Large number of armor units are gone. Crimea is being isolated. And so what you're seeing is that you're seeing the power cut in Crimea. The gas stations just don't have the gas. And so people are starting to leave Crimea. The Russians are starting to leave Crimea. Russia keeps hitting Ukraine, like I said, with ballistic missiles, glide bombs, horrific images. And Russia is not winning, is the conclusion that many of us hold. But Ukraine is not losing. Unfortunately, Trump could put an end to this. The United States could put an end to it if the United States would just step in and push back hard against Russia and Putin, provide the interceptors to Ukraine, and provide a lot more material support. But of course, Trump is a friend of Putin. He's controlled by Putin. He does not want to do anything to hurt the Russians. So what's Russia going to do? Sir William Browder, who who was in Russia many years, knows how the Russians think. He had, I think it is Heritage Financial, who did a lot of investment in Russia in the 90s and early 2000s. He was also the sponsor of the Magnitsky Act, Russian lawyer who was tortured to death and killed by the Russians. Sir Bill Browder says that Putin's going to double down. He says the oligarchs will not do anything against Putin, and they're scared of him because they all have their fortune because of Putin and the FSB. And the FSB is the Russian Internal Security Forces, who apparently planned the Ukraine invasion and did a bad job of it because it's been a massive mistake for Russia and for Putin to invade Ukraine. So what else is going on? Peskov, who is the spokesperson, says that is now saying the special military operation is actually a war. Okay, they've admitted it's a war. Lavrov, the foreign minister, is accusing the European Union of robbery and piracy by attacking the so-called Shadow Fleet. This is in a 1426 story from earlier today in a Suffolk English. The article is called Lavrov accuses EU of robbery and piracy over cargo seizures because Europe is seizing illegal cargoes. Europe's fighting back. Well, guess what? If you fight back against Russia, you're the aggressor. Okay? That's how it works. That is the disinformation that they have pumped into the minds of so many people. And Russia is evil. Russia is the aggressor, and they're causing great disorder in the world. Putin is saying, Putin recently said in a meeting, he said, "What would we do without a war?" So what's happening is Russia is not going to stop. Putin's not going to stop. He can't stop, as Sir Bill Browder says. He can't stop because if he does, it's the end of his power. If the end of his power, he's dead. So he's got to keep the war going, which is what tyrants do. And what has happened now is the narrative is changing. So this goes back to Magician of the Kremlin days. The narrative is now changing in Russia from our sources, and it's saying that NATO's the bad guy, and NATO is just expanding this war against us, and we have to fight NATO. This is the lie that's being put out by the Russians. Okay, this is the lie to keep their people in line, to get their people ready for what many think is going to be a mass mobilization after the September Duma elections. So how bad are things? I mean, is Russia's obviously getting ready for a mobilization? How serious, how bad are things? August 7th, UK Telegraph says in an article, quote, Russia could attack NATO within weeks. U.S. intelligence warns. Washington says Putin may attempt to test the alliance's resolve at some point between this autumn and 2029. So that article goes on and says American intelligence is clocking the Russians are getting ready to attack NATO. If you attack NATO, then everybody in this alliance is to come to the defense of everyone else to attack the aggressor, and that aggressor is Russia. Of course, that's not what Russian disinformation says. Russian disinformation is just the opposite. An organization called the IISS issued a paper dated the 19th of August of last year called The Scale of Russian Sabotage Operations Against Europe's Critical Infrastructure. In the paper, it states that Russia is waging an unconventional war on Europe, which is sabotage, vandalism, espionage, covert action with the, quote, aim has been to destabilize European governments, undermine public support for Ukraine by imposing social and economic costs on Europe, and weaken the collective ability of NATO and the EU to respond to Russian aggression. This unconventional war began to escalate in 2022 and parallel to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, end of quote, and the EU is continuing to struggle to properly respond. Now, on the political front, I think that what Putin is doing, he's counting a lot on countries to fall in on themselves. He's got these wild national parties like MAGA and Le Pen's party in France that are there to divide and rip apart and weaken society. Same thing in the UK. And there are elections for French president in April of next year. It's going to be very important because what could very well happen is pro-Russian parties will gain a large majority or large number of seats in their parliament. They're organized differently from us and may come to exert unusual, improper, disproportionate power. Very few people actually support these far right nationalist groups, but because of Russian disinformation, you think, oh my gosh, they're really popular. But they're not. They're not popular. They're they're bad people, and everyone knows that. Everybody knows they're extreme, but they still have a following, a core following. Okay, so let's go on and talk about Quetta. Okay, CEUTA. This was an incident where thousands of men stormed the barricades to get into Spain. Okay, well, guess what? This was a Russian operation. Okay, this was a Russian information operation. If you look at the videos as I have, you're going to see an organized assault. Okay, this is organized. These guys were ramped up. They were geared up. They were told to charge. Okay, and they were all men, according to my sources. They all went home at night, or most of them went home at night, and there were thousands of them that came. They were there for the photo op, in other words. Now, Trump is friendly with Morocco, and so there is some indication that Trump's regime actually helped Morocco stage this, because what this does then, it is used for information purposes to destabilize the countries of the West and the U.S., saying, seeing how we're being overrun by these foreigners. This harkens back to the imagery, to the tropes of Camp of the Saints by Jean Rispel. And I actually happen to know something about that book, because what they did in that book is they had this image of all these Indians just storming ashore in France. Well, the Quetta was meant to trigger those memories of Rispel's book, Camp of the Saints. And guess what? Wemhoff called it, and before and after I called it, the EU called it, and the EU said they're investigating that how the videos and other is being used. This is an August 4th report from Liga.net entitled, "The EU is investigating Russia's involvement in the information campaign regarding the events in Quetta. Europol is investigating Moscow's possible involvement," and how this is being circled around the Infonet, which is disinformation network, which is positive for Russia, showing Russia's the good guy and the West is bad because they're destroying their civilization with all these aliens coming in. And so the West has got to get rid of its liberal or American order and come to some nationalist, populist way of organizing, which means that you have conflict and you break apart the ability of people to work together, and you get parties or powers or pluralities that get into positions that are very favorable to Russia, and they help Russia, and Russia then advances geopolitical goals because Russia doesn't like democracy. As Ann Applebaum says, Russia doesn't like democracy. Okay, tyrannies don't like democracy because it weakens them, it threatens their power of the tyrants. Okay, so again, the nationalists, the ultra-nationalists, and the trad Catholics are picking up on Quetta. They're saying, look how our people are being destroyed, civilization being destroyed. Well, so let's talk about the tradies, okay? The trad Catholics, one of my favorite groups, I say that facetiously, because it's become very obvious to me that the trad Catholics are just simply an echo chamber of Russian disinformation. They're easily used by the Russians. I have personally encountered it, as I've told you before, and other people are noticing this, okay? And this is coming out into the open now. My piece on grooming Poe took off. I got a lot of a lot of play, and it brought other people out of the woodwork who said, "Look, the trad Catholics, trad Catholicism, especially in the U.S., is being used by the Russians to promote certain false narratives, to promote disinformation that hurts America and helps Russia." And so this is what's coming out of it. Poe issued a statement, which basically, he changed the subject and he exonerated Russia, which in my mind just simply reinforces that he is open to being used by the Russians. And then what happened too, some people said they watched him do an interview that same day and that he was visibly shaken. So I'm not quite sure, what's going through his head, but, it's unfortunate that young people are getting caught up in something they don't fully understand, probably because of something that's very disordered within them. And so they attack the system without fully understanding what's going on and not fully understanding how things work. And that's very unfortunate because they're given power to their darker natures. And that's what we see with Poe and a lot of other people. Um, okay, so what came out? An important resource came out, which actually I'm still analyzing, and it came out by somebody called St. Michael's Sword Publication. Okay, so it's a fake name, but it deals with the Russian subversion of the Catholic Church. It talks about all these different trad influencers who promote these Russian narratives. Um, and it's got a chart of all these people who it's based on my experience, that chart looks pretty accurate. These are people who are putting out narratives that are anti-American, promote the narratives that the Russians want. Maybe they're not overtly pro-Russian, but they promote narratives that the Russians like and want, which is to demoralize people in the West, to attack the West, to attack America, to attack the American order, okay, and to attack liberalism. That is what you're seeing with a lot of the Russian messaging. And the St. Michael's Sword publication, which is 286 pages long, and it is on X. Mentions all these people and what they're doing. Not all of them, but a lot of them. It's got Salmons, Jones, Marshall, Poe, Cox, Coulomb, John Henry Weston, 1 Peter 5. All these platforms are promoting these, pro-Russian, anti-Western narratives, and this publication does provide some evidence of that, and I think it's worth considering looking at. Now, I've got some concerns, about the authorship of this. Meaning, I don't know who St. Michael Sword Publication is. That person did pressure me about trying to get me to denounce Jews, saying that Jews are evil and the Catholic Church teaches they're evil, and so that is something that the Russians do. The Russians, as we know, promote anti-Semitism, hatred of Jews, and what the Russians often do is they will get conflicting narratives, or they'll get incomplete narratives, or they'll have narrators promoting their narratives fight each other. Okay, so you'll agree with part of it, but you won't agree with other part of it. One big thing the Russians push is anti-Semitism. Okay, and so you have to understand that while the Russians push the decline of the West, they're also pushing anti-Semitism. It's those are two narratives. They're also saying liberalism and American order is bad. They're also saying the Jews are bad. Basically, this is why I found Why Post-Liberalism Failed book so important. Basically, what you see is the connection of these two ideas, these two disinformation narratives, the connection of these two narratives being used to attack America, to attack the West, and to bring tyranny and to destroy civilization. Because we have civilization and it's working really well. Russia doesn't have civilization. Okay, it's barbarity, it's savageness, and I should probably do a show on that. I know I got to do a show on cognitive warfare. I'm sorry, I've been tied up reading about it and doing other things, and I will get to that. But the good thing about the St. Michael Sword piece is that it does show how these various trad Catholics are promoting Russian narratives or disinformation narratives that hurt the West, and that the Russians can use. If the Russians didn't write the narrative, at least they amplify the narrative, at least they use the narrative, and that's what a lot of these trad influencers are doing. We know the Russians have penetrated the Catholic Church. Matrokin told us that. Golitsyn and Perestroika Deception told us that, and we're witnessing it now. Okay, so let's go on with other things. Senator Graham, I believe he was assassinated. Russia made no statement, but the influencers had called for the death of Senator Lindsey Graham, Dugin, Soloviev, the RT owner, Margarita Simonyan, and you can check out Julie Davis's article. I think it's in Yahoo. Head of RT calls for Lindsey Graham's assassination after edited video. That's from May 28, 2023. Again, I think that's at Yahoo. So the Russians wanted Graham dead. So it would make sense, that they would kill him somehow. Now, Russian intelligence services could very well have done it. There's someone called Igor Eidman, Russian opposition leader, who he says the Russian intelligence services probably did it. Sir William Browder has said there needs to be a complete check of Lindsey Graham, complete autopsy, and very quickly done to rule out or to determine what he really died from, because it's a possibility based on Bill Browder's experience that the Russians killed him. Russians use a lot of bad means to kill people. And so you have to look for the evidence very quickly. Now, I believe there was an autopsy and the FBI was somehow involved, but it doesn't appear anything came out of that we know of right now. Okay, so there's good news in all of this. Laura Loomer, who's a big fan of Ukraine now, for years promoted Russian disinformation and Russian propaganda against Ukraine. Well, she's done a 180. She's realized that Russia is the bad guy here, okay? And Ukraine's the good guy. And she's been making a very big deal about this, and she's had to pay for that. Her viewership is down. She's being attacked. But this is very significant because it goes to show Russia is promoting disinformation. And a lot of people know they've been promoting disinformation, turn and say, look, we're sorry, realize, I'm sorry, that they've been promoting Russian disinformation, turn and say, I'm sorry. So, welcome aboard, join this effort to enlighten the world to the evil of Russia, to the disinformation that they're pushing about Ukraine and about most everything else. Noah Smith has got a blog called Noah No Opinion .blog, NOAHPINION. He's an economist. I've read some of his stuff. It seems pretty good. He writes about economics. He has a post on Twitter with graphs from August 12th, 2 days ago. And it shows the decline of MAGA, which is very interesting. And it shows that the YouTube video watch is down 50% since January of 2025. January 2025 is when Trump was sworn in as president. Okay, so MAGA views on YouTube are down 50% since January 2025. X views of MAGA influencers are down 75% in the same period. 75% down. Rumble, I got Ruble. Rumble is down about 75% in the same period, January 2025 to August. And the Podcastistan, as he puts it, as we all put it, is down it's at about the same level it was in January of 2025. However, between January 2025 and now, in October, it peaked. It was really high. And what happened is since October 2025, Podcastistan, pro-MAGA, is down 50%. We're seeing pushback against the Russian disinformation. And people understand what Russian disinformation is. When the trolls appear, you're on the right track. And so I think this is starting to lose this disinformation, this social media attack. While it's still very effective, very strong, it's losing effect. And it looks like the nationalist parties are losing effect and can be defeated. So how do we respond? Sean Weiswasser has written a book, which I've talked about, a CIA, I don't know, I don't have it back there. It's back there somewhere, about the CIA, just a book that just came out. Sean Weiswasser, a former CIA agent, and he says, August 12th, 2026, he says, our strength is unity. And so what we have to do is come together in our alliances and push back. We really have to sanction Russia. We have to help Ukraine. We have to strengthen the defenses against the Russian attacks. And we have to realize that we're at war with Russia, and they started the war. So what can we do? Keep speaking out against Russia, like I do, like many of you do. Speak out against Russia and the collaborators. Speak the truth. The truth is always going to win. Contact your congressmen and senators. Demand their support for Ukraine. Demand they oppose Russia. Demand they fight back against Russia. And tell them about the problems, the form of the Russian warfare against us. And then support this channel and me. Like it. Tell your friends about it. Subscribe. And fight for the truth, because we are based on the truth. America is based on the truth, and the West is civilization and based on the truth, and Russia's not. It's based on lies, and it's meant to destroy us. So thank you very much. Support this channel, speak the truth, and fight out against evil and Russia, which is the same thing.